Good afternoon and welcome to the Local Foods Marketing Practices Briefing. My name is Joe Parsons. I serve as chair of the Agricultural Statistics Board here at NASS. We are excited to be here this afternoon sharing these results. I have a few notes for our live streaming audience. Federal statistical agencies are guided to provide for a wide distribution of information in a variety of formats and be open about processes and procedures. This briefing is intended as one more avenue to reach out and explain the data released today. We will not be taking questions from the public during this live stream. However, NASS staff are available for email or phone questions as always. Specific contact information is available on the NASS website. We strive to have everything presented at this briefing match the official record. However, should there be any discrepancy between what is presented at this briefing and the published estimates, always refer to the official published estimates. With that, I want to turn it over to Mr. Tony Dorn, Chief of the NASS Environmental, Economics, and Demographics Branch, to share some background and highlights of today's report. Tony?
Thank you, Joe. Good afternoon and welcome to the Local Food Marketing Practices Executive Briefing. My name is Tony Dorn and I will share with you the results of the 2020 Local Food Marketing Practices Survey. First, I would like to thank all the producers who responded to the survey to make these results possible. Also, thank you to the federal, state, and regional partners who support local foods and the NASS team to help produce these results. This presentation today will cover the background of the survey, the sampling and survey processes, and the results of the survey. Some things to keep in mind about this survey are that this is a special study from the 2017 Census of Agriculture. The reference year is 2020, which was during the height of the pandemic, and the results are available at the national, regional, and state levels. The Local Foods Marketing Practices Survey sampling frame consists. This map displays the regional publication levels of the Local Food Marketing Practices publication. The states with the hash marks are the 30 published states, and the other states are included in the regional and national totals. The Local Foods Marketing Practice Survey sampling frame consists of all the active operations in a stratified sample design. There are three group stratifications of direct sales types. Group 1 was stratified using the value of direct market sales as a measure of size. Group 2 was stratified using an indicator of previous direct sales. Group 3 was a strata of all remaining operations that did not have any indicator of direct marketed sales. The total sample size was 64,540. These are the key definitions. A local food is a locally or regionally produced agricultural food product that is transported less than 400 miles or within the state that it is produced. An operation is a farm having at least $1,000 in sales or potential sales, which produced and sold food for humans to eat or drink directly to consumers, retail markets, institutions, and intermediary businesses in 2020. This excludes abnormal operations such as prisons, schools, churches, or research facilities. A commodity is a food sold in its current state from livestock and crop categories. Value-added are products that have been altered or packaged in a way that is not required for transportation before being sold. Value-added products in this survey excludes products that are packaged in a way that adds value, such as half gallons of bottled milk. Now we will discuss the results of the 2020 Local Foods Marketing Practices Survey. For total direct food sales in 2020, over 147,000 farms use direct marketing practices to sell foods in the United States. This compares with over 167,000 operations in 2015. In 2020, $9 billion of food was sold through direct marketing practices, including value-added products at the first point of sale. This compares with $8.7 billion sold in 2015. $5 billion were direct sales of fresh or raw commodities, and $3.9 billion were food sales of value-added commodities. As far as the top 5 states by sales, California is the leading state in total direct food sales with $1.43 billion that accounted for 16% of the U.S. total. Pennsylvania was second in sales with $600 million. This was 7% of the total. New York and Michigan were third and fourth in sales, and each accounted for over $500 million and 6% of the sales. Maine rounded out the top 5 states with $342 million in sales. This was 4% of the U.S. sales. Looking at a map of the previous table, we can see that California was the leading state with $1.4 billion in direct sales. The opposite side of the country was also strong in sales, with Pennsylvania, New York, Michigan, and Maine rounding out the top 5. Considering the number of farms with direct food sales, California was also first in the number of farms with over 14,000 farms and 10% of the total. Texas was second in the number of farms with over 10,000 farms and 7% of the total. Ohio, New York, and Pennsylvania rounded out the top 5, with each having over 6,000 farms. Geographically, California and Texas stand out as the states with more than 10,000 farms with direct food sales. Ohio was third with over 7,000 farms. New York and Pennsylvania were fourth and fifth with over 6,000 farms each. Comparing the percent of sales to the percent of farms by sales category shows that the larger farms have a higher proportion of sales. The green bars are the percent of all direct sales. The blue bars are the percent of the number of farms selling directly. As you can see in the top row, the largest farms selling 500,000 or more, were just 2% of the number of farms, but had a large share, 55% of the sales. Now turning to local food marketing practices by marketing channel, the edible food products were sold through 4 marketing channels: direct to consumers, direct to retailers, direct to institutions, and intermediaries. Direct to consumer markets include, but are not limited to, farmers markets, on-farm stores or stands, roadside stands or stores, CSAs, online marketplaces, and other markets such as pick your own and mobile markets. Direct to retail markets include supermarkets or supercenters, restaurants or caterers, independently owned grocery stores, food cooperatives, small food stores, and corner markets. Direct to institutions include markets such as K-12 schools, colleges and universities, hospitals, workplace cafeterias, prisons, preschools, food banks, and senior care facilities. Direct to intermediate markets are businesses or organizations in the middle of the supply chain marketing locally or regionally branded products. Examples include food hubs, food processors, and wholesalers. This table is a summary of the sales and number of farms sold directly by marketing channel. The pattern of distribution of sales is similar between 2020 and 2015. As far as the number of farms, direct-to-consumer food products are produced by the most farms, 113,400 farms in 2020. There were over 24,000 direct-to-retail farms and over 40,000 direct-to-institution intermediary farms in 2020. In 2020, $2.9 billion of sales were direct-to-consumers, $1.9 billion were direct-to-retailers, and $4.1 billion were direct-to-institutions and intermediary sales. As far as direct-to-consumers, we see in the first row in the table that on-farm stores were supported by over 49,000 farms and accounted for $1.23 billion, which is 42% of sales. Farmers markets accounted for about 28,000 farms and $514 million, which is 17% of sales. Online marketplaces were supported by over 47,000 farms and accounted for $312 million, which is 11% of sales. Off-farm stores or stands accounted for over $250 million in sales, and CSAs accounted for over $200 million. Overall, in 2020, there were 113,000 operations selling directly to consumers, with almost $3 billion of direct-to-consumer sales. Breaking out direct-to-consumer sales by sales of commodities and value-added products, we see that in 2020, over $1.5 billion, or 52%, were sales of food products, and over $1.4 billion, or 48%, were value-added products such as bottled milk, cheese, meat, jam, cider, and wine. Value-added products were sold by over 85,000 farms, while food products were sold by less than 48,000 farms. Looking at the top 5 states in direct-to-consumer sales, California is the leading state with the most sales of $284 million. This accounts for 10% of the direct-to-consumer sales. Michigan is second in direct-to-consumer sales with $188 million. New York, Indiana, and Pennsylvania round out the top 5, with each having over $150 million in direct-to-consumer sales. As far as the number of farms selling directly to consumers, Texas is ranked first, even though it was not in the top 5 in sales. Texas had almost 8,000 farms selling local foods directly to consumers. New York is ranked second with over 5,700 farms, and Ohio, California, and Pennsylvania round out the top 5. Switching to the number of farms by marketing practice, more farms supported sales to restaurants and caterers than to supermarkets and supercenters. As far as the number of farms, restaurants and caterer foods were produced by over 10,000 farms, and supermarkets and supercenters were supported by over 8,000 farms. Now we'll look at the type of sales by direct-to-retailer. Commodity sales were over $1.1 billion for 62% of direct-to-retail sales. Value-added products were $710 million, which accounted for 38% of direct-to-retail sales. Overall, close to $1.9 billion of food products were produced by over 24,000 farms and sold directly to retail markets. Now we'll take a look at a geographical map of the direct-to-retail food sales. States that make up the Northeast region account for the largest share of direct-to-retail sales at $504 million, which is 27% of the total. States that make up the Southwest region had the second largest direct-to-retail sales at $488 million. Looking at the number of operations shows a similar regional distribution. States that make up the Northeast region had the largest number of farms with almost 6,500 farms. Again, the Southwest region is second in the number of farms with over 4,000. Turning to the largest marketing channel in terms of sales, direct to institutions and intermediates, we see that $2.3 billion or 56% were sales to institutions and intermediates. $1.8 billion were sales of value-added products, and overall, over $4 billion in sales were direct to institutions and intermediates that were supported by over 40,000 farms. This map shows direct to institutions and intermediate sales by region. States that make up the Southwest region account for the largest share of direct sales to institutions and intermediates at $1.15 billion, which is 28% of the total, and the Northeast region is second in sales with over $1 billion. Now looking at the number of operations with direct to institution and intermediate sales, we see that the Southwest region is also the region with the largest number of farms at over 13,000 farms or 32%. Great Lakes region is second with over 6,500 farms, followed by the Northeast with almost 6,000 farms. Moving to the number of farms that sold food commodities directly through all marketing channels, we see that the top commodity group was beef, with almost 44,000 operations selling beef commodities directly. This ties in with Texas being the #1 state as far as the number of farms, with direct to retail sales, and #2 in overall direct sales. Fruits and nuts and vegetables were second and third, with over 39,000 farms selling those commodities directly. Poultry and poultry products, lamb and goats, and specialty animal products were all sold by over 10,000 farms. Pork, horticulture, and other crops were produced by over 5,000 farms each. Dairy products, grains, and aquaculture were the smallest categories in terms of the number of farms. Looking at the distance to where produced products were sold, the majority of farms sold all of their local food products within 100 miles of where they were produced. 78% of farms sold all of their local foods within 100 miles. 19% of farms had sales for some products within 100 miles and other products beyond 100 miles. 3% of farms sold all of their local foods beyond 100 miles. Breaking down the distance to the largest grossing marketplaces, we see that most of the sales were within 20 miles of where they were produced. The left group of bars shows that for all marketing practices, the largest percent of producers traveled less than 20 miles to sell food products. Farmers markets is the dark blue bar with 65% of products sold within 20 miles. All farm stores is the orange bar with 74% of products sold within 20 miles. CSAs are the gray bars, supermarkets are bronze bars, and restaurants are the light blue. The next highest grossing marketplace range was 21 to 40 miles, and the distances at the far right, 100 or more miles, were sold by the least percent of farms. Comparing the percent of direct to retail and consumer marketing channels Across the number of years farms use direct marketing, we see some variation. In the graphic, the orange bars show the percent of direct-to-retail sales, and the blue bars are the percent of direct-to-consumer sales. In terms of the number of years farms use direct marketing practices, 23% of farms use direct-to-consumer marketing practices for 5 years or less, as shown on the blue bar on the left. A higher percent, 33% of the farms use direct-to-retail marketing practices for 5 years or less, as shown by the first orange bar. Conversely, looking at the far right category of farms that have used direct marketing practices over 20 years, 28% use direct-to-consumer marketing practices, and 23% use direct-to-retail. This shows that the direct-to-retail was used more for newer farms using direct marketing practices, while more established local food producers had more sales that were direct to consumers. Looking at the characteristics of producers, 49% of the producers with direct sales reported farming as a primary occupation. This compares with 42% of all producers on the 2017 Census of Agriculture. 43% of the producers with direct sales were female, compared with 36% across all farms in the 2017 Census of Agriculture. 11% of the producers with direct sales were under 35 years old, compared with 8% from the 2017 Census of Agriculture. And 9% of the producers had military experience. As far as farms accepting Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program or SNAP payments, 7% of the farms selling directly to consumers accepted SNAP payments. This compares with 8% in 2015. 27% of operations selling at a farmer's market accepted SNAP payments. This was an increase from 19% in 2015. Regarding internet usage for local food marketing practices, 78% of the farms used direct marketing practices and had access to the internet in 2020. This compares with 72% in 2015. 21% of farms using direct marketing practices host websites for their farms. This compares to 17% in 2015. 42% of the websites offer a platform for selling agricultural goods. This is a strong increase from 29% in 2015. In review, these are the key findings of the 2020 Local Food Marketing Practices Survey. 147,307 operations sold $9 billion of food through direct marketing practices in 2020. Direct to consumers was the most popular form of direct marketing, with 77% utilizing direct to consumer marketing practices. However, direct to consumer sales only accounted for 33% of all direct marketing sales. California accounted for the largest share of direct marketing sales with $1.4 billion, which was 16% of the US total. Operations with direct food sales of $500,000 or more accounted for 2% of all direct farm marketing operations, but received 55% of direct marketing income. Finally, 78% of operations sold all the directly marketed food within 100 miles of the farm. This is general contact information, and thank you for attending the briefing today.